Travis, the look on your face, Travis, when I dropped him in, how's that for a drop in? That made up for like 4 drop ins.
That's great, man. You did good.
The look on your face was so amazing. I wish I could have screenshotted it, Michael. You're like, I was like, yes, surprise.
See, we are so blessed to have such good friends in our circle of family. We certainly are so blessed. We are so blessed.
So in 20 minutes, it's going to be 4:20 in Bangladesh.
All right.
Okay.
My little doggy wants to go for an inky dinky winky. So
I was going to say,
back in time for that 4:20.
I was going to say,
I got to go get a Coke myself. So can you
so
put
I'm going to put on a video.
Yeah, put on a good interview.
Yeah,
Dank is going to be around, and we got Jonathan sitting up there just waiting to come on and smoke in front of the whole world and say New Zealand needs to legalize. So
coming into Bangladesh, how about Michael and Michelle Aldridge's thing? Is that?
And do we have other guests coming on soon here, Martel?
In India, we have someone coming on, don't we?
Yeah, at seven we got the round of guests coming up. But like I said, I've been up for about 2.5 days, so I was going to try to get like 45 minutes in and let you boys watch a video and talk amongst yourselves.
So we don't have another guest coming on here pretty soon?
Not within the next 2 hours, no.
Yeah, it's at 7:20. It'll be 4:20 in California.
Yeah, it'll be 4:20 in France. In France, if Farage comes on, and Tony Button, and then they brought a whole slew of people with them. That lady from Barcelona I told you about, and somebody else too. A couple of lawyers. It's a slew of them.
Well, I do need to walk my doggy Yoggy.
So go walk your dog.
Until I return, please have something going.
We're not just going to let it chill. So that was awesome. Wow, awesome, man.
Telling
right?
You.
Like, who gets to sit there on 420 and just smoke down with Ben Jonkers? And we got that conversation went everywhere.
Yeah. There's things that mean something to me that I don't know.
Bangladesh the only place in the that celebrates in the next time zone? Where did we do last time?
It's a little confused because it bounces back and forth.
Yeah, like no, I'm looking at the map now. Where did we celebrate last one?
It was like Laos and Cambodia.
Right.
And now we're
there's Bangladesh and Bhutan and Kazakhstan.
You're going to be a pro by the time we get done with this. You're going to know that map forward and backwards.
Kazakhstan. It's 6 hours plus 6. It's the plus 6 we're looking for.
Yeah.
The plus 6.
We're right in the middle of Russia.
Well, only to Kazakhstan, and I can't pronounce that one. Kyrgyzstan. It's not all the stands, but between this one and the next one, we're going to get all the stands. All right.
Oh, Casper would love that.
Nepal, Kathmandu, and Nepal.
And we could stop. We could stop in half an hour for an Indian one.
Yeah, we can.
Because they're half an hour out of sync with everything. Oh, Nepal's 5 3/4. Oh no, that gets too confusing.
Every opportunity to smoke you can find, just like there's 1:30 seconds from now.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite statement that Ben made for a favorite topic that he touched on? Dacta?
Oh my God.
Oh, I haven't met him before. It was all new to me. His place in history. He's one of those people that I've met a few. Some people look at me and think I've done something, but there's a lot of people that have done a lot of good, and that's one of them. And he's still doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, how can you not be impressed?
It's hard to compare apples and oranges, as they say. A person that is a caregiver to one other person, and that other person survives or does great as a result of that, is, you know, such a major player. But at the same time, there's something special about that person that if you pull them out of the equation, the entire world would change. And that's not that many people. There's a small, you know, I think that's kind of the club that we're talking about here when we're talking about Conkers and we're talking about Jack Herer, you know,
Mark Emery's.
Mark Emery. We're bouncing around and we're not really quantifying it. But if I was to quantify it right now, that's what it is. It's you know, that person that, you know, they've done so much, not necessarily meaning to, you know, and Mark was just doing his thing on free speech at a bookstore and refused to stand down when they, you know, they came to take away our marijuana books. And Bob Randall was just a humble guy in DC. When they came to take his plants, he said no. And, you know, the Mark Emery and these guys, Jack Herer, just, you know, was this guy that got a bone and refused to let go. He went around the world with hemp and I don't know, just somehow or another, that singularity, I think, of what their of purpose and of that drive somehow reached a level where they affected the whole world. And
I think I'm gonna write. I just got the greatest idea for a book. I'm gonna write this book. I'm gonna write down the laws of becoming an activist, a cannabis activist. It's gonna be. I'm gonna. I gotta take notes. Hold on. I'm literally. No, it's so.
Who will want to read it?
Everybody should. I mean, but honestly, if
No,
you
they
care
should.
about art,
They should.
it'd be the transitional phrase, the transitional statement, the definitive map, almost like a Think and Grow Rich, except a Think and Grow Aware. You know what I mean? That it's going to be based off the studies of these giants, right? All these geezers that I get to kick it with that have just changed the world, right? and all the different traits that they have. Because when you said quantify, that's what ticked it for me. I was like, if you quantify it, it'd just be traits. You couldn't narrow it down anything, right? It would just be characteristics. You say they all share this one, or they might have this. Like I was thinking, Ben's humbleness was just crazy off the charts. There's no ego there, right?
No.
Humble's all get up, and like, you know. But you look at Jack, and Jack was humble in his own way, but he was ego. You know, he was a lot of Jack, right? But he could do that because he had Jack. But you look at the contrast and you look at the similarities, and you come out with the bomb ass roadmap. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure of it. After this day is over, and I have notes from all these different. Wow, it's gonna be collecting that information and putting it down. Even if it's not a book, even if it's like a 10-part like blog or something, it's got to go down. You know what I mean? It's got to be somewhere.
You got to give us credit for having some really interesting people along the way. Dr. Grinspoon's son, Dr. Grinspoon,
Yes.
Peter Grinspoon, he's talking about Dr. Leary, Timothy Leary. And, you know, Timothy Leary is wide known as Harvard. He's wide known for psychiatry. He's wide known for LSD, but he's less widely known for being the guy who fought the Marijuana Tax Act, the federal marijuana law, and his case won in federal court, and the Marijuana Tax Act was found unconstitutional. And that's pretty amazing that here, you know, this guy won one of the most significant battles in the marijuana movement history. And most people don't even know much about it. If you ask them about Timothy Leary, that wouldn't be the thing that they'd mention, you know. And I get a kick out of that too, you know. It's yeah. And it's
420.
It's just
Mate?
no, we got a ways to go. We got 11 minutes.
I saw Dak looking off, pointing. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
No. I was pointing to Gary because Gary would tell you about his experiences yesterday, our time, the 19th of April. You know what the 19th of April is?
Gary's birthday.
Cycle Day.
Psycho Day.
Bicycle Day.
Bicycle Day.
I didn't know if it was that or if it's a toothbrush day.
Bicycle Day.
Bicycle Day.
Anniversary of Albert Hoffman's first intentional LSD trip.
Oh, nice.
At 4:20 on the 19th of April.
He dosed
Nice.
himself at 4:20 in the afternoon.
Dropped the
Some part
dose
of it.
first time.
That's awesome.
There's some definite karma.
And then
there.
rode a bicycle, right?
Yeah.
Dropped a tab, then went for a bike ride.
Rode his bike home.
Hey?
Rode his bike home because he wasn't feeling quite normal.
Well, then biked home. Okay.
See, there's another karmic connection, right? I love bicycles. I've been a bicycle guy my whole life, and my favorite cities just happen to be the top marijuana places and just happen to be the top bicycle places. Or is it just a coincidence?
No
Probably,
comment.
probably not. There are a lot of people that consume cannabis that are very eco-friendly.
What's the
In so
main
many
form of
different ways.
transport around Amsterdam? Oh, it's the bike.
Yeah, that's right.
I wouldn't want to be on like a very, very fast electric scooter and do the first LSD ride. That might not work out well.
No, no. But
Bicycle was better.
I was
No, it can
feeling
be
a bit
dangerous.
cold at the beginning of the conversation because I was still recovering from my bike ride.
When I'm allowed out of this place, I really enjoy getting on my scooter, my electric scooter. It's the same size as the higher ones that used to be on the street, and just zipping around the city and around the waterfront is just a wonderful experience. I had come off it once. I was quite badly injured.
Ouch.
It didn't stop me. I still love it. It makes sense that more and more people use a scooter or some little electric bike, e-bike, in order to get around in the future, around cities, around their communities, where it's at all feasible. Keep the cars out of the cities.
Heck yeah.
So electric vehicles are going to become the thing, more so than anything else. So
That's raised an interesting thing, the competition or the conflict between the electric bikes and the regular bikes, at least in a place like Amsterdam where there's enough bicycles where it could be a thing. Here it's not a thing because a bicycle's an oddity either way here.
yeah. But it's a coming thing. E-bikes are growing in popularity in New Zealand. It's simply because people like me who can't, for old age reasons or other, hip reasons, whatever, can't ride a normal bike, just can't get myself around on one. So I had an e-bike and it worked beautifully. And then I got an e-scooter and I love that even more. So I like standing up and whipping around. It's not very fast. It's just liberating.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
And a little bit dangerous.
A little edgy.
Little edgy for an old man. Hey, I turned 70 last week. So, yeah.
Calm down, Jackie. Calm down. We need you.
Yeah. No, we're coming to the end of the fight now.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm thinking about the place that we're coming into here. Bangladesh, the edge of
Bangladesh.
India.
Yep.
When I first started working on the stuff at the UN level, on the cannabis side, when I started working in Vienna, I told my colleague in New York, Sunil, Dr. Agarwal, I told him that I'd like to see what Bolivia's country did, what Bolivia's president did at the UN. I'd like to see the president or the top level of India come and go to the UN and do the same thing for cannabis. What Bolivia's president did was went up and did a speech. It was Evo Morales, and he pulled out of his pocket and he gave this impassioned speech about coca and coca leaves. And it would be great to have a country stand behind cannabis and really defend it and pull cannabis out of their pocket and make a impassioned speech about how cannabis is important as a medicine, important for their culture and their economy, all the things that he said about coca, very much true for cannabis. And when I said that about India, he laughed. He's got family and everything in India. But since then, just in the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of things have changed. And something I've just learned rather recently, there's Ayurvedic texts where they have all the traditional medicines that contain cannabis that are in the ancient recipes that they've got in India. And those recipes can be brought back to life. You don't have to go through the whole mechanisms of an approval process like the FDA kind of thing. You don't have to do that. If you've got an Ayurvedic text that has the recipe that you're working from, they consider it already a proven thing that you can just go ahead and go right into research and development. And I think that's so cool. You know, it bodes well for India to just jump right into the fast lane and have dozens, maybe even 100 or 200 even at the top, right off the bat. And who knows, they might even find more Ayurvedic references, you know, but I think it was 200. The company that I was talking to, that a representative of which came over to Vienna, they were just working on 2, and it was keeping them busy, you know, coming up with the medicines. So it's really fascinating. And this is a place where we've got a lot of population. You know, it's a big portion of the world's population in India and China and places like that. They've got this traditional medicine history of cannabis that's so rich. They should be leading the world in the thought about traditional use of cannabis as a medicine. I really, especially China is the one that basically started the drug war way back when, because of the opium wars. And you can just track the, you know, type into Google the opium wars and tracks you right back to China about 1899. And they were furious, and they remember it right to this day. At the UN, they just bring it right up, the opium wars, like it was yesterday, and it's over 100 years ago. But these guys remember it. And, you know, we have to kind of, I don't know, undo 100 years of colonialism to set things right. And right now, you've got countries like Canada and others that have been able to capitalize on sort of the drug war situation that's unfolding. It's not quite fully legal yet. So countries that aren't very big, that don't have a lot of geopolitical pull, they feel very scared. They feel daunted to get involved and get to do stuff in the cannabis space. Whereas countries like Canada, USA, you know, they're not afraid to do it. And that's just not right. You know, it's a very unfair playing field right now. And I hope for a change in that playing field. But right now, the best hope that we have, at least for the short term, is these World Health Organization recommendations. They would take some of the heat off of the conversation. But in the long term, the International Drug Control Treaty has to be changed. It has to be amended so that countries that want to commerce in cannabis for non-medical use can do so. Medical use, at least in the numbers that we found in the United States, is like 20 to 1, I think is what it came down to. In other words, the number of patients that we had in a program compared to the number of people that were over 21 that could purchase legally and did at the, you know, the adult rec stores was 20 to 1 or more. So that's the thing, you know, it's, until we open up that larger market, I don't think you're going to have look at the non-industrial small farmers, the craft farmers, the indigenous farmers, the traditional use people, all of that. Look at that sort of as a niche product, almost like a fine, really, really high-end wine. So there's not, if you had a small market, you wouldn't sell a lot, you wouldn't sell enough of those really high-end bottles of wine. Most people are going to buy just a regular bottle of wine. They're not going to spend $100 on a bottle of wine. You need to have a huge, huge swath of the population before they're going to be willing to go the extra mile and get that $100 bottle of wine. And I think that's what we're at here in the world. If we could open up cannabis full on, then all of a sudden, pot that you grow outdoors in New Zealand, that you're growing in you know, Laos and Cambodia, stuff that's being grown in Samoa, stuff that's being grown in Hawaii, stuff that's being grown in some of the best outdoor in California, etc. You lay that out and start comparing, and that's when you really see some of that really beautiful cannabis that's so special that it'll really motivate some people to pay enough to actually make it worthwhile to grow cannabis small scale and put it in a world market. Because a little grower in a somewhere in Uruguay isn't going to be able to compete with China, you know, whatever.
Well, 20,
but go ahead.
420.
Well, we got him.
420,
420.
Bangladesh.
We weren't paying attention. We've been
Cheers,
paying attention.
Bangladesh.
420. Okay.
We got into a meditation
Do
trance
a
there.
conversation. Right. Do it.
So I'm gonna. That's actually a really good roll onto this. That's actually a really good roll onto this video. So I don't know if you guys know the Aldridges or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got the Aldridges. They were one of the very few that we couldn't smash it all in time, so they volunteered to hop ahead of us. So I got the video. I'm gonna roll into it. But I think there's a really good segue just based on who they are as people. So, and there's just super high level conversation going on. You know what I'm saying? Like this whole night has been like high level conversation. You know what I mean? And it's refreshing because you don't usually come across. You know, I mean, the circles you guys run in, you do, but with me, you know, it's very far and few between. I come into somebody that like knows. You know, like you can speak about any segment of the sector, and they're like, oh yeah, just able to. I don't know. It's blowing my mind. Really, the whole thing's blowing my mind. So my mind's blown.
I love it. I love it. Much love to Bangladesh and to everyone in this time zone. 420.
020, Bangladesh.
You know what makes me laugh is if you asked any of the people who've spent their whole life on this.
Report in Florida, where I am now, guys.
That's Al.
Has declared that dispensaries now, the cannabis dispensary is essential as well. So they have not closed. And for the South, that's a step
Here's
forward.
the video.
Michelle, can we go back to your illness, please? 8 years ago. I don't want you to dwell on it because I know it was terrible. But I do know that you also, I believe I know, that you also use this as an educational opportunity for the hotel, for the hospital staff.
Oh, yes.
I see Michael smiling. Tell us how you did that.
Well, everyone I came in contact with, I said I'm using cannabis and telling them how I do it. I talked to all the patients that I was sitting there doing chemo with. I talked to the doctors.
It was the earliest use of a vaporizer in a hospital. We used the old Omicron vaporizer
Yes,
in the hospital, and the nurses loved it.
because there I was sitting in chemo,
Make it work better.
and they didn't even realize it until I explained it to them.
Well, you always work cool and ahead of your time, Michelle. Come on.
Well, I do want to say one thing is that we were one of the first canna couples.
Yeah. We got married in '76.
But, you know, we've been together since 72. And so, yeah, you're
we've been
another
small-
cannabis couple
Yeah.
that have been together for a long time.
Yes.
And I'd like to take this in a little bit different direction besides that is, okay, we're all sitting at home. It's 4:20. We all want to be together. Well, let's be together. We have our masks. Which
Notice
are,
the design of the mask.
What?
Get the video going.
Anything. We're looking at your computer program, your computer page. There's nothing showing.
Nothing showing?
No, man.
We got nothing showing. Just talk. And a picture of your computer page, your file page.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
I can see a few files there.
Oh, okay. I see where you're at. Gotcha.
Bangladesh. Bangladesh. Oh, there you go. There's a picture.
Uh-huh.
we have our masks. We have our marijuana.
With marijuana leaves.
We are dressed. We are dressed like we're going out with our earrings and our marijuana stuff. So everybody dress up. I mean,
There you
why
go.
not?
On 420.
Yeah, you
know,
got the
go out, but why not dress up anyway?
Yeah, dress up, have a bowl, party. Right? Come on.
Right.
And we can do party with people online, and other people be at home partying themselves.
A few years ago, we got to meet the Waldos, who actually came out with 420.
Who started the 420 afternoon.
They used to hang out at San Rafael High School and go right there, and it's 420, so they would go looking for their marijuana at the time.
Well, I want to ask a question of Michael. As far as I'm concerned, he is the eminent historian here. And I've heard the Waldo story, but I have also heard counter stories. So do you agree with Michelle that it's the Waldos that started?
Oh, yes, definitely.
You go on record?
We talked it over with them, yes. And they were not aware that they were doing anything influential at the time. They were going to go get stoned.
They were just high school kids.
And I don't know how it got out so widely. I think perhaps Dennis.
It was Steve Hager or Steve Bloom.
Yeah.
Bloom?
Bloom and Hager.
Yeah, and Steve Hager, two good guys, man. Really good guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're high times people. Excellent guys. Yeah.
Oh, the one other thing that's really important about Michael is he introduced Jack Herer to hemp.
Right.
And that changed.
Oh, tell us that story. What's that story?
I'll tell you that story. In 1972, we had offices throughout the state. We had 20,000 volunteers. It was the last time that an initiative has been put on the ballot by volunteers rather than by big corporations with big money. We spent maybe $200,000 for the entire campaign. Now you have to spend $200 million or something absurd. What we discovered, where was I going?
We were doing the campaign.
We were sitting around the office in Los Angeles one day, and in walks this almost bald guy. He had very short hair, was dressed very conservatively, very square. Walks in, and he said he wanted to help circulate the petitions. And I happened to be having I was rolling a joint with a pack of Acapulco Gold papers, which we manufactured from hemp in the early 70s and distributed with all the proceeds going to legalization of marijuana. So we put all the money that we made from the rolling papers into the marijuana initiative.
Which is what we were supposed to do.
I remember that.
And in walks this guy, fresh out of the Army, looking like a very square guy. Walks in and he wanted to know what he could do to help. So we gave him a bunch of petitions to circulate. And I happened to be rolling a joint with Acapulco Gold papers, and he said, "What's that?" So I explained to him it was rolling papers made out of hemp fiber. And he said, "I didn't know you could do anything else with it besides smoke it." That's the first time he'd heard of hemp fiber being used in paper.
Wow.
And boy, did he take off with that football.
And we were lucky enough to edit the first edition of his book.
He was a good writer, but not a good researcher. He tended to make things up that he thought were true. He once told, in the first edition of The Emperor Wears No Clothes, he said that I had said that the Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper. And I said no such thing because I knew that the Declaration is written on parchment, which is lamb's skin or something like that.
Lambskin, yeah.
And so he was just delighted to learn about paper being made out of hemp, and he sure took that ball and ran with it.
Sure did, yeah.
Bless him. I have a wonderful picture of Jack Herer and Michael Krawitz and myself looking at my pipe collection, which is fun.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, speaking of going back to my cancer, the day I put it on Facebook that I had lung cancer, and I had gone to see the oncologist and the surgeon, and I came home, and who had phoned me was Jeannie Herer, and she said, "You're going to use hemp oil or RSO, Rick Simpson oil, aren't you?" And I said, where do I get it? And she said, Valerie Corral at Wham.
Oh, there's another heroine. Yeah.
I had called Valerie on, that was Tuesday. I called her the next day, and she had brought it up on Saturday. So there it was.
Yeah, that's. I'm so happy you mentioned her, Michelle, because I'm going to see if I can't get Valerie on this program. She's another one of those folks that has just gone way beyond the norm here. It's just way beyond.
She's the reason that our California law now includes the idea of co-ops.
Yeah.
Because she managed to get that into the first law, and co-ops became legal, and that's how the dispensary started.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit, Al, about the future.
Okay.
We are building right now, presently, we are building the future of marijuana industry. And it's obvious in the takeover by huge corporations, which is not what we wanted. We wanted all the little farmers up and down the West Coast to be able to produce their product, own their product, and sell their product, competing with each other. You know, I got this great Sinsemilla and you got this great edible and so forth. That has not happened. Instead, the way that legalization has come down with Prop 64 is that the big corporations have all the advantage, and they're the only ones that can afford to put an initiative on the ballot. So that's one. Of legalization, the packaging is changing. Pre-rolls, such as this one from, I believe, Flow County, is Granddaddy Purple, a very famous strain. And to get it open, you have to take off the label, which announces that it is 20.9% THC. So you have the THC percentage on the label. You have where it was grown on the label. You have when it was grown on the label. And you open a package, and out comes
Hold it up higher, Michael.
Beautiful,
Hold it up higher. Yeah, there you go.
beautiful little joint. There's the packaging it came in. This is the wave of the future. We're going to see more pre-rolls and less roll your own, and more sales of packaging with things like edibles, oils, tinctures, and vaporizers. Now, we found out personally that we don't like the use of vaporizers. It's bad for the throat, and it doesn't give me the high that I want. But I'm finding that the pre-rolls are much better than they used to be. Now, you used to be able to get terrible pre-rolls that were badly packed, but these are quite nicely packed. They're firm all the way through, and I think that's the wave of the future. The other wave is associated with that. During the pandemic right now, the dispensaries are allowed to be open, but they can't have crowds. They can't have many people going inside. So what they do is they have you order online first, and they have a huge menu online. You can pick pre-rolls or eighths or ounces or whatever you want.
Anything, edibles.
And so you check what you want online. You send in that order, and 20 minutes later, you go get in a little line. You park, and you go get in a little line outside the dispensary, and 6 feet apart. And you work your way up the line, and by the time you're at the head of the line, your package is all ready for you. And I saw one guy in line with a shovel so that he didn't have to touch the package itself. He had to put it on the shovel.
Hey, let me ask you about those
I
pre-rolls.
think that's the wave of the future, actually.
I hear you. Michael, let me ask you about those pre-rolls you got there.
Yeah.
Is it apparently they're nothing like the pre-rolled cigarettes that the legal patients have been receiving for years? The federal patients, don't be those. So there's no steeds and stems in these?
No, absolutely none. The only problem I have with pre-rolls is they burn too fast up at the top. And so you have all the marijuana burning and no paper holding together. And so you lose a whole third of the joint. And
yeah, well, you know what?
considering we sold Acapulco Gold rolling papers, one of the things that we found out when they first ordered it
Oh, yes.
was, go ahead, tell the story.
No, you go ahead.
Well, Blair wanted it as organic as possible. He didn't want any chemicals in it or anything. So they ordered the paper, and they lit their first joint, and the paper went flash,
Flash.
and all the marijuana dropped down. They found out they really needed
The chemical
chemicals, retardants to stop the spread.
So we immediately called them up and had to put the retardants back in, and we had great success.
So there's something going on with the rolling papers that all the
Pre-roll.
pre-rolls use, and it wastes a lot of marijuana as far as I'm concerned. You
Well-
don't get this with the same if you just roll it in regular rolling papers.
Well, let me give you some science. I learned this at a Patients at a Time conference. Dr. Mark Ware, you guys know Mark,
Oh yeah.
from Canada, McGill University Hospital. He came in with a study at one of our conferences, and it went something like this, that if you use cannabis in a cigarette form, a joint form, you only really get to use about 10% of the cannabis's value. If you use a bong, which he did not recommend, he didn't like that at all, but you do get about 40% of the value of the cannabis being used. And if you just use a pipe, the pipe gives you about 60 to 80% of the value. So from the point of view of economy, a pipe is the way to go.
Oh yeah.
But here's some other wisdom I got at a pot conference. Dr. Tashkin, Donald Tashkin, who you guys also know from UCLA, head of the pulmonary department, did a big study for the U.S. government and found that smoking cannabis did not do you any harm at all. No harm at all. But well, I lost my train of thought there, Marilyn, but what was I talking about? Donald Tashkin and the smoking. Yeah, the thing he said about the pipe was that he wanted me and everyone else to only use it for a day. So now we're to the coronavirus thing. He told me, this is a face-to-face conversation, that even my own pipe could give me bacteria or other problems the next day. And that I should always clean that pipe thoroughly before I used it again, even if it was only me that used it. So that was years ago, 20 years ago, and I now use 3 pipes. I have one I'm using, I have one that's drying, and I have one that's... Yeah. So anyway, I think, we're trying to educate people, and I think you're talking about the California advances here with the pre-rolls and the edibles and all these things, but there is a background here that we also need to look at as far as what's best for recreational use, certainly for therapeutic use. And oh, here's another thing. Mary Lynn is just giving me a note. I'm getting all kinds of advice here now. But Dr. Tashkin also told us that the old habit that Michael and I had for years, where we would take a hit and then hold our breath and maybe even count to 10 or something.
Right.
No. Very bad. Don't do that. He said 3 seconds, let it out. After that, you're doing yourself more harm than good. 3 seconds. So folks out there.
That also.
Well, it's Dr. Tashkin. I believe in that man. And so out there listening to this interview, you want to smoke them if you got them, but only hold your breath for 3 seconds. Okay? So Michael.
Use a pipe.
Back in 1974, we were asked by the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art if we had any pipes to show. And this was their favorite, Michael.
We did a pipe collection exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art, and this by far was the most popular one. It's called the baby's pipe or the beginner's pipe. You see it?
You see that?
And it has a nipple. And there's a bowl. You put it in there.
Hold it up.
Put it up further, so.
So there's your beginner's pipe.
Oh, what?
I thought that'd be fun. Listen, I have archives. I have a pipe collection that's unrivaled. It's as good as the one exhibited in Barcelona at the Hash Museum. and I don't know what to do with it. I would like to, and I have at least 500 boxes of archival material. I've taken notes on every meeting I ever attended in the last 50 years. And so I have boxes of notes, I have boxes of paraphernalia, I have posters, I have postage stamps, all kinds of archives, and I don't know what to do with them.
We need a museum just like they have in Amsterdam and Barcelona, probably San Francisco, because there's so many people with so many archives that for the years, and we want to show them to everybody.
And we were thinking ourselves of contributing as much money as we could to that idea of museum, but then on the other hand, the economy has cut our savings in half.
Yeah, well, of course, your collection with Mike Kravitz, Donnie Wirtschafter, there's some really nice stuff out there in the United States, and I agree. It's not too soon to celebrate. I'm sorry, it's not too soon.
I would really like to keep my archives out in the West Coast because they're mostly West Coast organizations.
Right.
California especially.
Well, listen, guys, it's been a pleasure. Have Michael, before we go, how long, in your opinion, has it been that humans have used cannabis in some fashion or other?
At least 10,000 years.
10,000.
That was the title of Ernie Abel's book, The History Over 10,000 Years. It may be that we will find, as we're exploring Africa, we may find hemp seeds in Africa. It has not been well known, but I think that, like the human race, I think that hemp probably either reached Africa at a very early stage or came out of Africa originally with human beings. However, that's a total conjecture because the earliest evidence is from India and China. And in China, the use goes way, way, way back to prehistorical times with the legend of Emperor Shen Nung, who was said to have had an invisible stomach, an invisible abdomen, or a visible internal organs. He could see his internal organs. And therefore, he tested about 100 different herbs and discovered that cannabis and ginseng and several others were very useful for medical purposes. And that's how marijuana medicine started, is by a guy experimenting on himself. Of course, he's a god experimenting on himself.
Wow.
It's very interesting that it goes all the way back. I once told this to the researchers of the National Commission on Marijuana. I said, you got to follow Mo Siever's example. He said he never gave any drug to his monkeys that he hadn't taken himself.
Exactly.
And I said that self-experimentation by the researchers is essential to know what they're talking about. That they.
I agree with you. Yeah, sure. Remember when I had a great idea, and that great idea was you as the PhD was going to write a letter to the Monticello, and we were going to ask if we could take a sample of one of Thomas Jefferson's pipes.
Seeds or pipes, yes.
Remember, just to see what was left in there. And I forget how that went, but I don't think it went well.
I wrote the Mount Vernon Society, which is a bunch of old ladies that has been with, handling the tourists of Mount Vernon forever.
Yeah.
This was in the 60s, and I wrote and I asked if there was any record of George Washington growing hemp. And they completely said, no such thing as any marijuana with our first president. Well, they've now discovered he had 19 plantations at Mount Vernon alone. 19 little separate plantations of different types of seeds. He got some seeds even from New Zealand that he wanted to try. And his purpose was not to grow marijuana, but it was to grow hemp for fiber so that he and his slaves could make their clothing out of hemp.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And he also ran the biggest distillery in the United States, didn't he?
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Washington. Oh yeah, he liked alcohol. Yes, he did.
I believe that, and he liked his pipe.
I bet the slaves liked hemp.
I'm sure they did. I know you told me a story once, Michelle, that the first building in San Francisco.
Oh, yes.
Right? Go ahead. Who
The
made
first
that?
building was in San Francisco was made out of a sail of a ship,
Captain Richardson.
Captain Richardson, and the sails of the ship at the time were made out of hemp. So in Chinatown, there is a plaque actually on a wall that says this is the first building by a white man, and it was made out of the sails of the ship, which were hemp.
See what you can learn on 420. Hey, listen, man, we had a good time. Thank you guys so much for joining everybody and sharing your wit and wisdom. And we're so happy, Michelle, that you look great. You look wonderful. We're so happy that you're healthy.
Thank you.
And Michael has always looked great. You know, he's never looked bad.
And we want to thank Shoshana Phoenix for making these masks for us.
Aren't they wonderful?
I walk down the street with a mask and everybody gets it.
Well, we get you guys. You're wonderful. Thanks again so much.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Mary Lynn.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That was really cool.
That was great.
What an amazing group of people. A fantastic interview. You guys do great. I tell you, you know how to get the guests to open up, and it's fun to watch you interact.
Yeah. I love those masks.
I'm more casual now. Taking off my tie.
Oh
I'm
no,
relaxed.
Mai Tai?
Well,
You had a Mai Tai?
I took off my tie. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, so in 4 minutes, it's going to be 4:20 in Mumbai.
Yeah,
There you go.
because it's half an hour out of sync from the rest of the place.
We're in a very confusing part of the world
It is.
where Michael Aldrich said is the oldest part of the hemp history on earth.
Aren't they an interesting couple to watch too?
They're great.
Yeah.
They just seem like the perfect married couple, you know. So
Hey, on the outside, I might be appearing calm and collected, but I'm buzzing with fandom at the moment.
Isn't this a great walk around the world, Gary?
Yeah, well, I'm getting to talk to and meet my heroes. The legends.
Amazing. You see, and to a lot of people, you're one of those heroes. So,
No, these are the people whose shoulders we stand on.
yeah. Yeah. When you join the movement, you hear about people that are already there and you stand on their shoulders. And we're meeting those people whose shoulders we stood on. They've been doing it for longer. So,
and it is funny sometimes to see some of the come along latelys who are totally unaware of those who came before them. And
I know people like that.
Yeah, they've invented CBD or they've invented a new way to smoke, or it's like Jack who?
Yeah, really? Yep. Your claim to fame is that you smoked a joint where? Whoopee-doo. Just think of all the people. Look, I know how hard it is here and we're still fighting the fight, but just think of all you guys in America. You're still fighting in a lot of states, but man, those early states. I know what it's like. I was in California when medical was okayed and I got sent to prison. I did time in California for putting a crop in when medical was permitted. And the sheriff's department and the fire department conspired and told lies about me in court. Judge wasn't going to believe me. I was a foreigner growing cannabis where I shouldn't have been. So, it's sad, just sad.
Which is more loving and caring, the New Zealand police and prison system or the American police and prison system?
No, you can't compare in that way because prison is prison. Once you've lost your freedom, you've lost your freedom. Doesn't matter which country. And it's only a question of degree then. And yes, here we go. It's Mumbai. Mumbai, it's India. It's not just Mumbai, it's the whole of India.
Yay!
So the whole of India, we're now going to join you. I'm not, of course, because I'm not permitted.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have any bong, but we'll do our best. Boom. Alak, boom.
Yeah. It's spelled B-O-N-G.
Bong, 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 bong.
Mr. Sandman, we need a dream. Boom, 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 boom.
I was just saying earlier on, all of the people who've been lifelong activists on this, if you asked them at the beginning if they thought it would take their whole life, they would have laughed at you. I can remember when I started smoking in 1978, we used to joke about how shit it would be if cannabis was still illegal at the end of the century, 20 years ago.
Hey,
And I don't know about you all, but I not only did not think it would be legal quickly, but I just had the attitude, all right, I'll do this for a year. You know, I'll help this old guy take care of his little book. He has a little book out there across America or whatever. I'm going to be working as a comedy writer, or I got a comedy club. This is going to be like 6 months to a year until I get discovered, you know, by some great talent to go, oh, this guy is so funny, we got to put him on SNL. And I got so wrapped up in the cannabis movement that even if they offered me a job at SNL, I'd say, no, I'm busy.
I decided that I had to choose a date. The problem was that we didn't have cannabis legal was because nobody had ever set a date when it was going to happen by. So in about 2008, it might have been 2007, but it was in that sort of time frame, I started a campaign, Legal by 2010. And you can go on YouTube now and you can find interviews with me where I was sincerely arguing with fervent belief that it would be legal by 2010. And I was giving all the reasons why it would be. And here we are, 10 years past my deadline, and I'm still hopeful that a vote of the public, the unwashed public, who are going to make a decision whether I should continue being sent to jail or not, the people who have been taught by politicians for generations to hate on us, somehow we're expected that they will tell us it's okay, we won't treat you like a criminal anymore. Bullshit.
Jack always had the same idea too. Jack felt that the 100 monkey concept, along with just the fact that you can make fuel out of this plant. He thought that alone. I mean, he felt like, okay, medicine's important, clubbing's important. But when Americans realize, oh, we can make fuel out of it, there'll be a sudden change in Congress. There'll be a sudden change in the Senate. We're going to want to free ourselves from being slaves to foreigners who take our money and use it to destroy us. And when we came out and said, hey, look, you can make fuel out of this, they said, you're a bunch of hippies. You just want to get high. Shut up and go away.
And the issues are really, I know many, many people that consume cannabis on a regular basis. And for them, it's a medicine. And I wouldn't class any of them as hippies. I would say they're the widest cross-section of New Zealanders and visitors to our country that you're likely to find anywhere. All delightful people. And, you know, I've smoked with lots of people over the years. I tell people that I have probably smoked more cannabis with more people in New Zealand and more places, more publicly, than anybody else in the history of our country. All these years of driving our bus around and having open public protest demonstrations in high-profile places. We chose to do that on our first tour. We smoked in Parliament grounds, and for the first time, nobody got arrested. So, You know, we were cutting edge in places, but it makes no difference. You can go to Parliament and ask them to say, well, you know, can we stop fighting, please? You are citizens, we are citizens. Can you just stop fighting us? Can we sit and talk about this? We don't like you locking us up in jail. And they ignore us. They just ignore us. Until now, we do have some movement, all right? We've got a referendum. Here it is, the referendum. It's coming up.
I can tell you
In
one of the
September.
ladies that helped us along with, to change the attitude was a lady by the name of May Nutt. Back in the 1980s and 90s, she was fighting on behalf of her son Keith, who needed medical cannabis to stay alive. He was in a hospital, and the hospital staff turned their back when she gave her son the medications. The doctor who treated Keith said that Keith needed the medication. The state said no, it was against the law. And May Nutt kept saying, well, we got to. Now, she looked like your typical grandmother who would just come up with some little brownies for the little kids at school that you could just love. The little blue hair, the beautiful little dress, the perfect grandmotherly type.
Yep.
And she said that when she would go out in her yard in the morning, she'd find bags of marijuana in her backyard that people would just toss over. She said it rained marijuana. And to see this 60-something-year-old sweet little old lady, blue hair that you just want to cuddle up to, oh, it's like, it rained marijuana. And they say it's no longer recreational time. It's no longer party time. This is medicine time. This is real time. And we got to change it. Really makes you go, wow. And, you know, she was the first lady to go to the Supreme Court here in the United States on behalf of medical cannabis patients. And the funny, well, no, it wasn't funny, but the irony that occurred was that when it was finally legal for her and her son to have medical cannabis in his state was the same day that her son passed away. Yeah. And May Nutt has always been a torch in my heart for a lot of reasons. And she has been an inspiration and a strong spirit to this movement. Because after her son passed away, she continued that fight. She continued to go speak on behalf of him. She continued to go and speak before medical organizations and plead with them to open their minds and open their research. She explained to them how much it helped her son. And that could not have been easy to do week after week, after month, after year, after your own child passes away, to get up and speak on behalf of your own child every day. So she had an enormous amount of strength and dedication and love to ending this prohibition and helping other people get their medications. And she is, to my eyes, a true hero. A true hero. May Nutt.
Yeah, completely driven by love, not money.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few people that are not motivated by money. They're usually the ones that are at the forefront. Nobody does this campaigning thing to make a profit.
No.
It's the most thankless task of all. Nobody needs to tell you, Casper. Trying to keep your show on the road. I know what it's like. You know, I had to go big or go home. We had to keep our bus on the road, and so we formed a club so that would support the bus and give us a home. And in order to make that work, we provided what our members wanted.
Right.
Somewhere safe, somewhere comfortable. Didn't mind that we were making profits that was going back into the cause to keep our bus on the road. And they bought their cannabis from us. It wasn't a requirement for members to buy from us. We encouraged people to bring their own. And we still do that. That's still the philosophy. It should not be about making profits. It's
well, you're right. Another aspect of it, as well as when I have reached out to people to be sponsors on the network, oftentimes I'll hear, well, what's in it for me? Most of my customers are within a 10-mile walking distance of my store. And I remind them that there was a time when they couldn't have even had their store had it not been for Jack Hare and me and a lot of other people who came before them. And it's not just about their store. It's about a movement. It's about ending cannabis prohibition. It's about raising the voice of medical patients who can no longer be heard. And they look at me like I've just said nothing. That means nothing to them. They want to hear how many hits do I get on my website? How many people are going to like them on Facebook? How many people are going to see them on YouTube? How many people can they get the eyes on? And how much money can they make off of advertising on my network? They don't really seem to care anymore that, look, there's somebody sitting in that corner that's shaking all over because they got Parkinson's. And if they get their medical cannabis, they stop shaking. And they are criminal if they smoke cannabis. And you need to help make that person's medication legal. It's not just about the customers who walk in off the street and come into your store and buy your herb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, get me on my soapbox. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. It's never about coming into your store. It's never about, for us, it's never about being, the money over the dispensary counter.
And it looks like Martel wants to bring on another video, I think. Is that right, Martel?
Well, he should line it up before he interrupts us. Yeah. Well,
no, but I mean,
we're in the middle of a conversation. Choose your moment to bring on a video.
And we're pretty straightforward. I love the fact that we're all pretty straightforward.
Hey, I turned 70 last week. Don't ask me to be polite anymore. I haven't got time for politeness. We spend half our time being polite. I'm going to waste half of my remaining years. Up yours.
Yeah, man, it's time for hemp, not time for polite.
There you go. Time for legalizing, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I hate not being able to swear on this. I like
But it does frustrate me that a lot of people who are now making money in the movement fail to see the need to put the money back into the movement so that we can continue to fight for legalization in the other areas of the world where it is not legal. That there's more to the world than their 10-mile radius around their store.
Yes. Well, the world is the world, and here we are.
Yep.
We're in different parts of the world, and we're talking to people from around the world, and we're traipsing around the world. Here we are, we're traipsing.
And in 18 minutes,
we've got some viewers right now that are watching us live on our Facebook pages. I'm grateful for that they're here watching us and joining with us. We have got the most amazing lineup. We've already met so many legends since we've been on it. How long have we been on now? We started broadcasting at 4 o'clock this afternoon, New Zealand time. What's that, 7 hours?
No, 8 hours. We've been on 8 hours here.
Have we been on 8 hours?
Yes.
No, we had another hour to go before it's 8 hours. 4. Oh, you're right.
We started at 8 p.m. my time, and it's just now 4 a.m. my time.
Is it?
Yeah. So from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. is like 8 hours.
10, 11. 7 hours.
Well, for you.
7 hours.
So I want to share a story with you guys, okay?
All right.
So my mom,
Okay, you're on.
my mom.
Hey, listen, just look at the time though. We've got the next location in 15 minutes
All right.
or less.
7:20.
Be ready for it.
7:20? 7:20, yeah. 4:20,
Yeah.
7:20.
5 past now. We're stopping at 20 past, remember? So
There you go, 20
we'll
past.
talk about where it's going to be.
That's the thing. It's always the same amount past the hour. It's just a different hour.
Yeah, well, except India, which we just did, which was half an hour past the hour. So
They got to
our
throw a
next
monkey
stop
wrench.
is Maldives, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. In other words, bits of Russia. Okay.
Hey, wasn't it Pakistan that threw that big party for Trump where they thought he was some kind of god or something?
One of them, I think. Yeah. So here, listen to this story. Okay. So
All right.
my mom,
Here we go.
my mom was sure that marijuana was a bad thing in my life. You know, that she watched a couple of the specials on TV in the 1970s, and she was sure that, you know, if I got tangled up with marijuana, it would just be a horrible thing. And she really never disabused herself of that position, but it was kind of cute. And the irony is kind of thick. There was a moment where we were at my house there, and I had cut my hair. I had really long hair. My hair was down, you know, to the middle of my back, like down my belt. And I had cut my hair, and I looked all, you know, kind of straight-laced and conservative. And my mom was joking, you know, who do I write the check to? Thinking, you know, I don't know what she was thinking, but she was trying to figure out why I cut my hair. And indeed, I cut my hair because I was going to the legislature, and I was going to testify on marijuana. and I wanted the legislature to take my word seriously. I didn't want them to see me with long hair and think, oh, I know what this guy's going to say. So I thought I could throw him off a little bit. So like cutting off my hair was like subterfuge. I threw him off a little bit by cutting my hair, and they at least would have to listen to me for a few words before they could hate me, I figured, you know, right? So it worked. It actually worked. You know, it got me under their radar and allowed me to speak to them and stuff. But it's funny, you know, I was just realizing tonight, and this is something I've never really got in when I was a kid in elementary school. I never really learned in junior high school, college, nothing. I've never really learned geography. and here, you know, getting high and hanging out with some of my friends and trying to figure out where our friends are going to pop up on the globe as we trek around this little globe of ours has taught me more about geography in just a few hours in all those classes. And again, you know, the irony of doing this, I only am doing it because of Casper asking me to do it. I'm only hanging out with Casper because of cannabis. That's definitely the connection that brought us together. And it's a beautiful thing. And the love is really thick, Casper. I'm glad you put the love in the mix for the, you know, the cure the world with love. And I thank you for that.
That was really nice. It's
Kind words.
it
I
is actually
appreciate
nice
that.
to have a look around the world and say, hey, look what's going on. And
Thank
here we
you for
are
recognizing
doing
that.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've been trekking across Russia. You want to see a bunch of time zones? Look at Russia. I didn't
Well,
even count them up. It was about 8 or 9, something like that.
again, according to MSLSD, the Russian time zone is also part of Washington, D.C. Right? There's so many Russians in Washington, D.C. that don't you also include that time zone as part of the Russian time zone? Right?
I don't know. I don't know. Well, you can see Russia from
Back there, you're on mute.
what was
You're muted. No one heard what you said.
the governor of Alaska? What was her name? Ran for vice president, I think.
It was
She was-
probably a good thing to be muted. I just made some rude comment about your president. So just as well you didn't read my lips.
Well, all right. What were you going to say, Michael?
Something about Sarah Palin.
There you go, Sarah Palin. Yeah, she said that you can see Russia from her door. So remember?
Oh, yeah.
We're coming up in the backyard of America because you're right. Sarah Palin can look at her backyard and go, oh, there's Russia. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Was there Wonder Woman X-ray vision?
Obviously, someone else that didn't do good in geography.
Here we go.
Got another video coming on with Al Maryland and the gang.
All right.
You know, there's very few things that I
Go
can
and
tell you.
make it big screen.
So say again, guest house.
Here you go.
There you go.
It works for us. It really does. What's up with Martel?
Okay, good. You know,
Well,
We know it's not recording.
he's gonna fix it now.
at the time I was working in,
Folks, this is Al Byrne. We're here at Time for Hemp 420. We're celebrating 420 because it's a day that, well, it should be celebrated. It stands for a lot of people who have done a lot of good work to bring good things to the world. Hemp, recreational cannabis, certainly therapeutic cannabis. That's what 420 represents, at least to me. And so on this program of 24 hours, we're attempting to bring to you the pioneers that have made a difference in this change of our society and the world society about what cannabis is. A lot of places to go. You know, you smoke cannabis in some countries, they hang you. So we're not done yet. But we're going around the world with people who are very knowledgeable, have a historical record of standing up for this issue. And one of those today is a very good friend of mine, John Getman. That's Jon. John Getman and I met, oh gosh, you have to remind me, John, but it was in a normal office somewhere in D.C. and back in the 82 or 3 range or something when Mary Lynn was doing her study from Case Western. But John now is a teacher, an educator in Virginia. I'll let him tell you about his history. But John, we'd like to concentrate today on a couple of things. The virus. It was very interesting how you were just talking to me about how well the students have gone to a virtual classroom, and you as well. And then, of course, we really want to hear about the history of cannabis from John Getman's perspective. You know, back with Kevin Zeese. Tell people those stories, because it was in those rooms with those few people that this whole issue really, I believe, came to be a real thing. I mean, we're going to interview some of the folks in the past that you and I know that came even before us. But you were right there at the beginning, John. So welcome. Talk to us.
Well, great to be with you, Al, and great to be with all of you watching this. I don't know, if you're old enough, you may remember back in the late 1970s, the second Star Wars movie came out, The Empire Strikes Back. And I only mention that because at the time I was working in what we called a head shop at the time. And a friend of ours was a guy named George Farnham, who was a protege of Keith Stroup, and who was took over Normal soon after Keith Stroup left the organization. And George at that time was working on a DC marijuana initiative. He wanted to get a reform ballot, a reform measure on the ballot in Washington, D.C. So I went out with George to collect signatures to get this on the ballot, and we hit the lines, the long lines waiting it into the movie The Empire Strikes Back. And that was the first reform activity I got involved with. We collected signatures in the store. I went out on the streets with George. We failed to get it on the ballot, but that was really one of the first things I did in the reform movement. And I got to know Keith a little bit, got to know George. And after I left working at the head shop, I went to work for Normal, went to work with George there. And that's where I first learned really about this whole issue. And, you know, as you were talking about the length of time we've been involved in this, two people came to mind. Well, Keith and George came to mind, but Bob Randall and Jack Harrar. And I met Bob Randall when he would come into Normal's offices to use the, well, we called it a word processor at the time. And I remember the first time, I knew who Bob was. I knew what he did. I knew he was one of the few people to have legal marijuana. And one night he was working in the office, and he asked me if I minded if he lit a joint. And I knew he couldn't share it, but I said, oh, no, fine, this is great. Of course, go right ahead. And that stuff stunk horribly. I mean, you've written a paper, you and Mary Lynn and others have written a paper about the quality of the research marijuana that these patients were given at the time. I understand why he asked my permission, because it was just rank smelling stuff. But I thought that was just so wonderful that he was able to get this medicine and use it legally. And I was always so impressed with Bob in these early days, because he was such an animated, articulate, and really intelligent guy. And when I worked at Normal later on, I remember getting a call from Jack Harrar one day. I'd met him through some conferences, and he talked about this book he was about to publish. It was the first Emperor book, and it was the history of the hemp issue, and it launched America's rediscovery of hemp. And he wanted to make sure Normal wasn't going to criticize him for putting this book out or for widely distributing it. And I said, no, this is great, good for you. And a lot of people thought Jack was sort of a crazy eccentric at the time. Well, you take what Bob was starting off in that era, you take what Jack was starting off in that era, you look at where we are now, and we've made such incredible progress in which both medical cannabis and industrial hemp are legal now in large parts of the country, hemp all over the place. And it's really a sign of how much progress has been made, both in terms of all the people who've gotten involved in this stuff, but also just in what these two pioneers who had some vision and some dedication were able to bring about by their efforts and by getting these movements started, in addition to Stop and the idea of getting marijuana out of the criminal justice system. So I'm just really proud to have been involved in this, and I'm proud to have had a chance to meet some of these early pioneers.
Yeah, well, me too, John, for sure. And the guys you're talking about at Normal were certainly leaders. And I recall when I got there, the fellow in charge of Normal before your time was Kevin Cease, who, of course, became a world-class activist. That whole Normal situation was so important. It seemed when I got there in the mid-'80s that there was nothing else. That there was no real organization that was stepping up and saying, hey, maybe we should reconsider this stuff. And I give Keith Stroup and the others at the time, which were basically approaching it from a legal point of view, a lot of credit. But you're not a lawyer. You aren't a lawyer. You were approaching it, well, I won't say from the patient point of view. You were approaching it just from a freedom point of view, right? You guys, Farnham and you?
Yeah, I had the good fortune to hang out with a lot of lawyers at Normal and learn a bit about procedure. When I worked for Normal for 8 years, I left the organization and went to get my master's degree, and I got to work under Arnold Trebek. What am I talking about? Arnold Trebek at American University. And Arnold was a good friend of Normal and a good friend of the movement. He later went on to form the Drug Policy Foundation. And I learned about checking details, checking sources, and what I learned about the law from Normal, what I learned about the rescheduling process from Bob and from Normal's litigation. I got involved in a new effort to reschedule marijuana. But I benefited from being around people who showed me the way and gave me some training and helped get me started. But something else that you mentioned, yeah, for a while there was Normal and not much else, but so many people came into Normal and then they spread off in all these different directions. You and Mary Lynn starting Patients at a Time, Rob Campia going off and starting the Marijuana Policy Project. John Sajo out in Oregon was one of the pioneers in trying to use the initiative process to get marijuana laws reformed. So many different groups and people came through Normal and then went off on their own to make incredible contributions to this issue. And I was really happy to be one of those people, proud to be one of those people. And I've sort of made a career out of social science and the study of drug policy. It's gotten me into teaching at university level these days, and I'm still sort of active in some research reports every now and then. But I got a really keen appreciation of the deeper issues involved with marijuana law reform, as you said, when it comes to issues like freedom, but also compassion for people who need medicine and economic development from people who need to prosper.
Yeah, and John, go back in time a little bit. You were very, very prolific with the writing you did back in those days in the early 80s and into the 90s, I guess. And your writing certainly impressed me and educated me. But it seems that what you were really after was some sort of decision by the federal government that would just end this thing as being irrational as a policy. And with that, you invited 3 friends of yours to take lawsuits against the federal government, which were eventually dismissed. Could you go into that? There's not
in California.
no, the extent of the work you put in to try and get the government.
420 Yekhin Reckonsburg, Russia. Turkmenistan.
I was trained by Arnold Trebek to look at source material, and those days we didn't have an internet. I would frequently visit the government printing office bookstore. Boy, am I a geek. And I found a document there called something about technologies of substance abuse and addiction and understanding substance abuse and addiction. So I bought this thing, and it had a research report on marijuana. And I read this research report, and this is where I first learned of the discovery of the endocannabinoid system and the receptor system. And when I read the research report, I realized this had a lot of legal significance involving marijuana status under the Controlled Substances Act. That is, it was relevant to rescheduling. And I had been with Normal. They'd had a rescheduling petition and litigation for about 20 years. And I realized that new research shed new light on the legal issues involved. And so I did what Arnold trained me to do. I read all the things that were cited. I read all the things they cited, and I put together a very substantial review of all the research, and I sent it off to the DEA in the legal forum that required them to once again revisit the rescheduling issue. It was a simple argument: marijuana didn't belong in Schedule 1. And I hoped that that procedure would force them to take it out and to make it available for medical use. Tried it once. It took about 5 or 6 years. It didn't work. Went back and did it the second time with updated research and got far more people involved, including Patients Out of Time. Some other advocacy groups got some patients. We weren't successful, but we called attention to the science, and we called attention to the inadequacy of those laws, that the government wasn't willing to follow them. But it was, I think, a worthy project, and I think that in terms of making the connection between the science and what the legal aspects of the marijuana laws was an important foundation for the work that's going on now.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because again, it's sort of these kinds of efforts that we're discussing, not only with you but with others from the past, if you will, seem to, they get lost, and these lessons shouldn't be lost, and those that are going to take this issue into the future can learn by these issues, but first they got to know they existed. And I'm glad you mentioned Jack. I remember sitting on the Normal board when Jack Herr showed up one day to ask for permission to speak. And of course he was given it. And I had never met Jack before, but he did seem, don't get me wrong, folks, Jack and I became very good associates. We liked each other a lot. But at that day, I thought he was a bit eccentric. But what he wanted what Normal had the ownership of somehow: H period, E period, M period, P period. Normal, maybe under your tutelage, had gotten that, and he wanted it, and the board gave it to him. And that was my first introduction to Jack. And I was so glad that I got to meet that guy, because he when you walked in the room was alive, man. It's Jack Herr. And he was passionate, he was smart, he was inventive, he was just a cool dude. And the thing I like to remind people was Jack Herr was an Army veteran. Not many people realize how many veterans, U.S. military veterans, have been leaders, actually, in this effort. And there was no more leader in the world here than Jack Herr in the hemp issue. He was it. He was the man. Still is. And but he's an Army vet, and I like people to understand that. So, John, we talked earlier about the virus that we're all dealing with, and why 420 is here to try and fill in some of the blanks and give people education, a little historical background on the cannabis. You told me that your students are adjusting to this home alone stuff pretty well. How about you? Do you adjust well?
I adjust well. I'm used to sort of working in my office, trying to get some work done, trying to read, trying to write. I find that the modern technology we have that allows us to keep in touch with each other and to get information, in that respect, it's a wonderful time to be active. It's a wonderful time that we can still conduct our work, even though we have this public health emergency that we're all facing with. And I think one of the things those of us in the cannabis community realize is that we've been dealing with social isolation in our own way, in a different way, but it's something that we're familiar with. We're familiar with the idea of having to keep in touch with people that we're not always seeing, that we're not always physically in proximity to. We've always been aware of the bonds that we share with each other and the need to maintain them over time. And I don't want to make light of the situation that we're in now with the virus. But I think it's something that the cannabis community has been prepared for over time, and I think that our experience with this issue gives us a resource to draw on. It gives us a strength to rely on to help keep our movement alive during this time, and also allows us to be good citizens, to participate in community life. We understand what public health is. We've been arguing about public health for a long time. We don't often think of it that way. We think about it as reforming marijuana laws, which is perfectly apt. But one of the things that's really bothered me, or at least a revelation I've had, is just think of all the money we've wasted on the war on drugs. And more importantly, money we've wasted on a law enforcement approach to what's really a public health problem. Where would we be now with respect to this virus and this public health emergency if we had invested half of that money in our public health system, in our preparedness, in our healthcare professionals? If we had truly given an emphasis to public health as a priority for solving some serious problems that society has, we'd be in so much better shape right now. And we've just squandered so much money on the war on drugs. And the marijuana community has been really in the forefront of trying to reverse that for decades and decades now. We have always had a commitment to public health. Most of us know it in terms of something called harm reduction, but it's basically giving public health the respect and the investment that it deserves. And if there's anything good that comes out of this public health crisis we have now, it's going to be a greater appreciation for the value of public health as a priority issue for government and for individual behavior.
Yeah, I guess it has been a public health issue. When I first got involved, I was more on the freedom side of the thing. I mean, I felt I was an adult. I'd served in the military for 24 years. They gave me a lot of responsibility with men's lives, and I think I did well. And then to tell me that I hadn't the ability to make a judgment about what's medicine and what's good for me and what's bad for me was insulting. Still, I'm insulted. And the veterans that I interview on Veterans Voices on this iHeart radio network feel insulted. They've done extraordinary things, especially most of them as young men and women, and then they come back and they're treated like children. They're not believed. And I'm hoping that your students will fight that kind of injustice, that we need to believe what people tell us, especially when we're being told by thousands of people. I don't care if they say it's anecdotal. I don't think it's anecdotal. Well, 10,000 people tell you the same thing. You know, you can judge them one at a time and say it's an anecdote, but after a while, no. And then we get into N-1 studies, John, but we don't want to bother everybody with that stuff. But the point is, this show 420 is trying to tell people that there are wonderful folks out there like Dr. Getman here and the other folks who are being interviewed that have stood up and have said the truth for years. And these are the folks we need to listen to, not the barristers that don't know what they're talking about and the talking heads on TV. You listen to these folks. You you look up their work, their research, listen to what they've done. That's important. How many of your students are going to go into this kind of social work? Any of them? Or all of them?
I think it's too early to say. What's really interesting, and some might think it's a bit ironic, I am now teaching students who are primarily preparing for careers in law enforcement. I'm having a chance to train people that want to be police officers, and I make sure that, our program makes sure they understand about drug policy and harm reduction. I spend a lot of time teaching them criminal procedure and respect for our constitutional rights. I teach a course on race and crime, for example. We're going into all kinds of issues that are related to the drug war. I think overall, this generation of college students has strong support for marijuana law reform, strong support for harm reduction. To them, it's really a no-brainer. There's really not a lot of controversy when it comes to this issue. They think it's common sense. I had a discussion online with some of my students in the last week, and we were looking at how punitive sentencing popped up in the 1980s with the Reagan war on drugs and mandatory minimums. And they were really surprised to learn that there was an attempt to take violent criminals out of prisons in the late 70s, and that got reversed by the Reagan administration. And that's stuck out like a sore thumb to them. So I have a lot of confidence in the students I come in contact with. And let me tell you something. You mentioned the military. The way we've treated veterans is a travesty. But I've learned something else about the military. I also teach graduate students in a management program at a different university. I teach criminal justice at Shenandoah University. I teach a management course for the University of Maryland Global Campus. And we have a lot of military personnel in our program. And one of the things I've learned about military personnel, for all its faults, the military is a really well-run organization, and they teach people about leadership. They train people to be effective managers. They train people to understand things like logistics and supply chain and training and how to use human resources. They train people how to look at situations, size them up, and make decisions. The military knows an awful lot about management, and the people that come out of the military have a great deal of common sense. And I find it not at all surprising, looking back historically, that so many veterans came out of the Vietnam War in the 1960s. They came back to a society with all kinds of problems and challenges. There are problems and challenges in every decade, but it's no accident that so many veterans have been so involved in this issue, because it's what they were trained to do in the military. They were trained to solve problems and to serve their country by solving these problems. And I think we have a lot to learn from them and their contribution to this issue as well.
Oh, thank you, John. Chris, I couldn't agree more. And I hear all the time on my interview program with the vets that they'll say it all the time. They'll say something like, well, you know, I took an oath when I was a kid to serve my country, and there's no expiration date on the oath. And I think that's why you see people like Dennis Perone and Jack Harher and Marilyn Mathry and me still trying to serve. It's just a way to do it, you know. But I agree. I was always impressed with the young men and women that worked with me in the Navy. Great people. There's always some losers. There's a loser everywhere. But 99% 99.9% of the folks I met were great people. Whether they stayed for the duration or whether they were there for a couple of years or 3 years, they did their job, they did it well, and we owe them a lot more than we're giving them. And while we're on the subject, because it's I can talk too, the VA in the United States has done all they can to solve the veteran cannabis conundrum, I'll call it. The conundrum is that the VA admitted in 2010 that cannabis was a medicine and that their physicians, nurses, etc., should treat it as such when VA personnel were in their care. But it's a federally, as John has tried to change, it's a federally prohibited substance. So the VA's caught between this rock and a hard place. And here's the rock and the hard place. Here's how it comes out. I'm a veteran in Florida. Florida has a legal medical program. Therefore, if I'm a legal medical program person in the Florida system, I get a card and all that stuff. I can go into the VA in Tallahassee, and the VA will say, welcome, Al, what can we do for you? And if I tell them I take cannabis, they put that into my medical protocol. If I live in Kansas and I go in and I say, I'm a veteran, I live in Kansas, I use medical cannabis, they throw me out. I can't be treated there.
It's ridiculous.
It's what I call, I've tried to coin this term. I admit I'm trying to coin it. It's medical treatment by geography. And it's absolutely crazy. It's ridiculous. It's not only, I think it's immoral, John, I think it's medically unethical. And especially when the organization, the VHA, sworn to help us, says they'd love to. They'd love to, except we got these people called senators. And, you know, they're doctors. They're not doctors, you know. They're lawyers and cops and stuff. And, of course, we're the doctors here at the VHA, and we want this. But these cops and lawyers don't want your veterans to have this stuff. I'd fire the whole damn bunch of them. I think it's awful. But anyway, I'm ranting. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to do it, and thank you for agreeing with me.
Well, we have this concept. It's a legal concept. It's part of the law, but it's also a value. It's called equal protection under the law. And we also have this item in the 14th Amendment, no state can deny citizens due process. I think those things are connected. And I think that's what, well, for example, our mutual friend, Michael Krawitz, who's a veteran and has done so much to publicize these issues and to pressure the VA and to expedite consideration of these issues and call attention to them. You know, that's one of the things he's doing, is he's trying to make sure that that all veterans get due process of law and, more importantly, equal protection under the law that gives them access to this valuable medicine. All of these issues that we focus on in the marijuana community, they all go back to a source, and that's the rights and liberties that American citizens have. It's the nature of freedom, it's the nature of liberty, and by advocating them, by working on them, I think that all of these activists are doing a service to their country. It's not just, hey man, I want to get high and not get arrested for it. You know what? People have been doing that for a long time. I mean, I don't want to diminish the number of people who do get arrested. That's also a travesty of justice. But it's about more than just being able to smoke a joint. It's about the principles involved. It's about freedom, as you said. It's about liberty. And it's about us being good citizens and contributing to our country, whether we've taken the oath like a veteran has, or whether it's just our own personal values. It's all about freedom. It's always been about freedom.
Yep, sure has. John, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking with you, as it always has been over the years. And you know, happy 420. What's the old saying? Smoke them if you got them.
Back at you, man. It's great to see you again. It's great to talk about these things, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to speak with all our viewers about these issues. I'm really proud to be part of this community, and I'm really excited about all the potential, about the progress we've made, and about the potential we have to continue this work.
Yep, me too. Take care, John.
Thank you, Al. You too.
Great interview. Great interview.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. I love John.
I think that's one of the few times I've had a chance to see him. Usually when he's on my show, it's just an audio podcast.
That's true.
And so I get to put a face with the name and the voice sometimes. Because oftentimes when people send out their bio or have you go look at their website, the photographs that they have of themselves are like 20 years old or 30 years old. And you think, oh, well, jeepers, this guy's like only 28. And then you meet him in a restaurant and you think you've met his dad, right? So
He was 28 when he got started, I guess. In this quest, my quest. Which we're having a debate as to where Kabul is. My gizmo shows Kabul coming up on 420. Afghanistan.
Yep.
Iran is coming up
And
on
Tehran.
420. Tehran, Iran.
Yeah,
coming up
both
on
of those, Iran and Afghanistan, are both the same.
Yeah,
That was
they're kind of
we're 10 minutes away.
they're kind of outliers. It's interesting the different time zones. They jump back and forth a little bit in this area of the world.
Yeah, it's strange. But 10 minutes, 9 minutes now.
There's nothing more frustrating than knowing I can't get you all to sign my book.
A 3D printer. We need a 3D printer again, Casper.
well, maybe the electronic signature. You know, you can print out my electronic signature and include it in the book if you like.
Those plotters they used to have, the electronic plotter.
I do want to remind the people who are currently on the network with me that I will be leaving the network in about 20 minutes for a short respite, and we'll be returning later in the day. And I will be turning over the reins of the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network to you all. So when I come back, I don't want to find that you've hired the DEA to run things, and you've got members of Parliament who are trying to end cannabis prohibition, suddenly doing programs. So take care of the network in my absence, please.
When are you leaving?
In about 18 minutes, I'm going to go and take my little rest.
Oh, man, that is just such bad timing.
Why is that?
Well, you're leaving in 18 minutes, and the strippers were booked for half an hour. You're just going to leave us too early. Sorry.
You're going to miss it all.
It's not the first time this nonsense has happened to me, right?
Oh,
It's like every time I leave, the hookers show up.
Hey, no strippers. They're not actually coming along to strip. They're bringing the weed.
Oh, my luck. Again, my luck.
They're the only ones that can get around town freely during a lockdown.
You have no idea how
I
long
saw
it
that
took.
in some of the towns, these strippers were delivering coffee from Starbucks and delivering groceries to special clients.
Yep.
I offered to work for the company, but they told me that they didn't know of any client that would like to have my delivery service.
I offered to deliver free hugs for $50. No one's taken me up so far.
So we actually have activists in Afghanistan from Kabul who came over to Vienna and was working with us over there. It's too bad we couldn't get him on the phone right now. We also have an interesting thing to say about Iran. Just kind of blows my mind a little bit that Iran has had some harm reduction measures that are really kind of advanced, even compared to USA and others, that you would think would be a lot more advanced than Iran. But in Iran, they had harm reduction measures actually implemented in prison, which makes perfect sense. You would want to have good harm reduction measures in prison, but giving out like clean needles inside prison is really accepting defeat in the war on drugs. Like we were talking about before, you can't keep drugs out of prison. And what's the point of drug prohibition in the end?
See, that's why you're not a very good Republican. We don't call it accepting defeat. We call it being progressive. Right?
So who we got coming on at a couple 20 minutes from now? Who we got coming on? Tell us a little bit. Who's the day shift?
That's on Martel. I don't know.
Oh, Farid Gavashay.
Who?
Very.
We're coming up to 5 minutes to 4:20 in Iran and Afghanistan. Big shout out to Tehran and Kabul. If anybody's got a joint there, it's time to pull it out. Get ready to spark it up. We're 5 minutes away. Anybody watching my page on Facebook that happens to be in Iran at the moment? Why? Why? Why are you watching my page?
That would be a really a very random thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
I can't wait to see Farid. I hope I'll be able to stay around for a minute, hopefully, and say hi.
You better. He's your buddy. You introduced him to the network. The guy he's talking about, Dankta and Gary, is that he came on and did a French version of Time for Hemp for about 2 years, and once a week, and he'd have his guest on, and he had a couple of sponsors occasionally. He did music from his country, and all of it, every bit of it, was spoken in his native tongue of, what was it, French, I think?
French.
French in France.
French.
And so that was really
magnifique.
So we've got 2 years in our archives of Time for Hemp in French, and at the same time, we're also doing a Spanish version of Time for Hemp about once a week.
So if I'd done a For Hemp show with no clothes on, you would have been able to say we have Time for Hemp in the nude version.
I don't think we don't really have much video, but definitely nothing in the nude that I can remember.
No, we're going to we're coming up to time now. I'm keeping an eye on it.
We're getting there.
3 minutes.
And we have now come a long way to where we're sitting in front of cameras globally, smoking our pipes in front of all the global authorities, telling the whole world how fun it is and how important it is and how needed it is to take Time for Hemp.
Yep.
That was a selfish plug. I'm sorry.
I like that, though. I like that. You know, Interpol has to take notice.
I would also, but look,
Brown's
proposing bail.
Dun, 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 dun.
When did you get that?
The back.
Oh no, that's why I'm still on home detention.
Oh, I thought that just came across your fax or something. You still have a fax, don't you? Right? Don't you?
That's why I'm not joining you. I'm not permitted to consume, so I'm not. But every time you guys do, I'm so embarrassed I have to actually go into hiding for a few moments.
And not show your face. I understand.
Not that I'm doing anything improper, you understand. I'm not.
No, you're just hiding your face because you're on a program about cannabis, and since you can't partake, it's just
I can't partake
for you to even. Yeah, I get it.
I can't partake,
and that's why I take 2 hits. I take my hit for me.
That's why I have to disappear so you can have a hit for me.
I do. I take a hit for you, and I want to let you know it's good pot, and you are enjoying it when I hit it.
I'm thankful. Thank you.
You're right. And I think Gary also takes a hit.
And I did receive that parcel in the post. New Zealand Post is going to get ripped apart for the next 3 days by the police trying to find the parcel that you sent me.
They'll have problems. I sent it FedEx.
Have you guys ever thought much about how once you become an out there activist, there's no going back?
Yeah, you're right.
You can't return to being
1 minute
a hidden user ever again. You feel like you've got a responsibility to keep talking, But it's also really liberating because you're no longer living in fear.
Well, that's for sure.
No, but you're living in poverty. After we have this 420, I'll let you know about that.
Yes. Well, you know, if it wasn't for cannabis law reform, I'd get my teeth fixed.
Because once you learn the truth, you can't shut up about it.
Yeah.
And when you go into a job interview and they say to you, well, you know, we're going to piss test you. And your response is, I don't do cocaine, I don't do liquor, I don't do tobacco. But I can sure as hell tell you, you're going to find THC in there. And there's no reason why there's a problem with that. It's on my own time. It's on my own free time. What I do in my own free time is none of your damn business. And the next thing you hear is, next. Thank you very much.
420.
Cheers, guys. I ran.
And so because of that, there is
Hey,
no
Ron.
turning back. You just can't. And then when they do a Google search on you for your resume and find out that your last 3 jobs were with cannabis companies, that also makes it a little difficult for them to hire you when they take money from Partnership for Drug-Free America. So, that's right. There is no turning back.
No. It's not a job though. It's become what I get up and I get out of bed for.
I don't know. I'm split on it, really. It can go 2 different ways. On one side, I'm pretty sure that I could just go sit on the porch, pet my cat, smoke a joint, and forget about the movement completely in 5 minutes. But at the same time, I can only do that if I felt like all the major battles had been won. And the strange thing about legalization, it's been kind of profound, really. But we all thought for legalization that was it. You're going to legalize marijuana, go home, you had nothing further to do. Legalization is like, especially with regulation, like a regulated adult sales and that kind of thing, that's a lot more work than we ever thought it was. And it's taken a lot of effort. Places like Colorado's marijuana law, their recreational access law, is bigger than the New York phone book, the printed version. It's just huge. It's like the size of the encyclopedia. And that's just the rules for cannabis. But in a way, you know, marijuana was legal forever up until about 100 years ago. For about 100 years, it was illegal. And now probably forever again, it'll be legal again. But the thing is, it was never regulated. It was regulated to a certain extent that it had to be hemp. You know, back in the day, you were selling hemp. It could be anything. It could be a lot of different stuff. So they actually said true hemp or cannabis hemp. And that was the real stuff because it was so much stronger, the rope and stuff like that. It was worth more. And they asked for more money. So they wanted to know for sure it was the real thing. Yeah, that's the Indian hemp. That's the cannabis hemp. That's the true hemp. And our hemp today is much more regulated than that when it comes to adult regulated sales, because we're actually doing what, I don't know, back then it was quasi-medical. I guess it was just sort of tolerated. You could get candy, the hashish candy from Afghanistan. You could get that sent to you, right to you in New York or in New Zealand or whatever around 1899, around that time. And then the powers that be started setting in with our modern drug war in that 100-year period. But yeah, that was a little bit of time right there where you had access to all this stuff, but I don't believe it was regulated. I don't think there was any actual, structure in terms of adult sales for non-medical use. It was just sort of something that was dabbled in as a taste of the what would it be, I'm trying to think of the word. It was a very, very amazing experience where people could go almost like they were going to the Orient or they were going to Shangri-La or something like that, but they were still in New York City. And exotic, that's what I was looking for. It's a very exotic experience for them back in 1899.
But a lot of
I don't know.
medicines.
You're from Virginia, and just going downtown can be exotic for you all.
Hey, that's true. Hey, that's no lie there.
You know, the unregulated medicines of that time, a lot of them weren't actually cannabis medicines, they had cannabis tinctures as a part of or an ingredient of medicine. So a lot of them contained other things that were quite dangerous. You know,
Yeah.
it's that's the unregulated side of it that we're talking about.
Yeah, well, you know, yeah, the the sales of patent medicines became regulated right around 1900. There was the Pure Food and Drugs Act, and what that was all about truth in labeling, and that was, I guess, what you might call the last really useful law, the last law along that line of laws that was really set up to protect the public and to try to do something, you know, really constructive. The next law after that was in the United States, the Harrison Narcotics Control Act, and a lot of doctors at the time, you know, said that that actually created addiction. There was no real concept of addiction before that. People were suffering from withdrawal, or they might be suffering from tolerance buildup, even abuse, even overdose. But these were all problems that were manageable, and the population was relatively small. And by labeling them, you know, addicts and making their behavior illegal, they created this huge problem. And I think it's funny, all the way to this day, you see very similar numbers. These numbers that show up again and again, 2%, 5%, 10%. And 2% is one number that you see again and again for the number of people that have really heavy problems with heavy drugs. So just because everyone in the whole world had access to heavy drugs wouldn't mean that everybody in the whole world would become addicted to them. And that's the drug war's main fallacy, I think, is that drugs are universally addicting. Cannabis is addicting, but gosh, it's hard to even be able to tell an addict. It certainly wouldn't be someone that had, you know, any real signs that you could put your finger on immediately, I don't think.
I make the distinction between dependency and addiction, in that I think addiction is anything that physical withdrawal where you actually get ill from not having the substance. Whereas with cannabis, withdrawal from cannabis is a psychological uncomfortableness for a lot of people.
That's true, because when I went into the military, I had smoked cannabis for almost, I don't know, 10 years every day. And they make it very clear you're not going to smoke it while you're in the military, and they're not kidding, because the only chance you get anywhere near the outside is like prison, 10 years down the road or whatever. And so when you start to, but the only difference is that I started having more vivid dreams. I can remember my dreams more. But that was, and then I found that from other people who, when they stopped smoking cannabis, that's the only thing that's different in their walk in life, is that they remember their dreams more. They don't really have any physical withdrawal. They're not really depressed. They're not agitated. They're not nervous. They're not on edge. I mean, they're still able to get along with everybody and move down the road. And I would ask, well, how was your life? Well, they said, well, I wasn't as happy. You know, I didn't get a chance to enjoy my day. And I remembered my dreams more. They were more vivid. And so at least it's not just me who had that experience. But yeah, you're right. There is no physical withdrawal of any type.
Strong dependency, psychological.
Well, that's
there are people who are taking cannabis for their physical ailments who do suffer, you know, greatly if they don't have their medicine.
Well, I want to use this time to also say good night, gentlemen. It is time for my nap. In order for me to get back up and do this again later in the day for another 10 hours, I need to get a little shut-eye at my point in life. And I want to thank all of you for keeping the broadcast going. Now, I'm serious. I don't want to come back and find that the DEA is in charge, or, you know, we just can't have that. Yeah, so, and I want to make sure that, you know, everybody's like standing upright. Your eyes aren't all red. You're too high to even, you know, we were going to do the show, but then I got high. We were going to do an interview, but then we got high. Right? So just take good care of it. When I come back, make sure it's still running and everybody's all right. I love you. And I'm putting my network into your hands. And I'm even leaving this. I mean, I'm leaving the whole. I mean, I'm not even going to stay online. I'm going to say goodnight, log off, farewell, bye-bye. And I'll come back when I've walked my dog and had my coffee. And Martel knows what that means, right?
I got a question for you. Can you hear me? Am I loud?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said, I got a question for you.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, pulling my chain. I'm on all this damn CBD. So, what was your favorite part about this first segment?
Me?
Yeah.
Ben Drunkers so far.
No, right?
Well, because he doesn't really give a lot of time. And over the years, I mean, he gives you the time you need. He's not stingy with his time. He's smart with his time. And normally, if all you're doing is just bullshitting about the past, he's got better things to do. He's building a company. He's building a museum. He's trying to help 4 other people get across the continent to get to an organization or a meeting to change somebody's mind. So when Ben Drunkers not only sits down and takes over an hour, over an hour of chat time to just talk about relaxing conversation, that to me was just fabulous. I'm serious. Now, the rest of the show has just been remarkable. We've had some great interviews, and we've had a lot of great fun. And, you know, I love palling around with Mike and Dankton and all y'all. But to be honest, I've known Ben Drunkers, as you know, since I started working for Jack 30 years ago next month. 30 years ago next month, I started this path in life. And not more than 3 weeks after I started working there, Ben had called in to talk to Jack about paying for advertising in Jack's book. And Jack was on the road, and I went, oh, well, if you want advertising, why don't you advertise on an American TV show? And he became my very first sponsor ever. He believed in me before I even believed.
Sorry to interrupt you guys, but I've just been called to the door by the police for a bail check.
All right, tell him I send my love.
Tell him I vouch for you. I know you haven't smoked anything.
Put it on the Zoom.
Can you bring the video with you?
Yeah, just bring the video. Run it for him.
No, that's all right. We don't need to be into his personal.
Okay.
Hey, that's good activism, though. That's in the trenches, boots on the ground.
But because
Sorry,
Ben
man, it's in my
Drunkers
blood.
has never, you know, he doesn't like, and there's been times when I've had him on as a guest on the show, on an audio podcast, and like 10 minutes into it, 15 minutes into it, he's like, all right, are you done with me? Well, no. Well, do you really want, how much longer do I have to stay? It's like, well, another 5 minutes. Well, okay. But I'm working on the museum. I got people I got to talk to about the factory. But okay, I'll hang on. And tonight he was just relaxed, chilled, happy. I love seeing him happy. He wasn't stressed about the movement. He wasn't stressed about his business. He wasn't stressed about his personal life. He was just happy. And I love that. So if you asked, seeing Ben like that, because I got a lot of friends who are coming on and off. But he's so far on the other side of the world, too.
Yeah.
He's always been mostly a voice. We have Skyped. We visit on Skype. But to have him as part of this historic event, too, really means a lot because he was one of the first people I spoke to 30 years ago.
Meeting him at 4:20 in the afternoon, his own time, helps a lot, too. It's a good time of day, you know?
So there you go. That was the answer right there. It's Ben Drunkers.
All right. Good night.
Thank you. And after I've had my coffee and walked my dog, I'll pop back on and start taking more time for hemp.
We'll see you this afternoon. Thank you so much.
See you then, Casper.
In a while.